All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're really excited. This will actually be the first workshop that the region has ever hosted on LinkedIn, and it's becoming more and more important in the professional world. And so it is certainly something we need to learn more about so that we can market ourselves better and land all the jobs with all the dollars, right? The good things that we want when we finish school. But I am not presenting this, thank goodness. But I am here to learn. Instead, we have our LinkedIn expert, our District 5 Vice President, Serena Rangel, who's going to tell us all the things we need to know about LinkedIn. And as she's going through, we do ask that you just please put any questions you may have in the chat. And when she gets to the end of her presentation, then she will be happy to address any of those questions. All right, Serena, we're going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Professor Linder. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hello, Texas region and guests. We appreciate your time this afternoon. So let me share my screen here and we can get started. One moment. All right. So let me see here. Second. Okay, so before we get into all the ins and outs of LinkedIn, I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of just what LinkedIn is for. First and foremost, LinkedIn is like any other website, a social media website. And so it tracks things like algorithm and it helps promote your brand identity. And so I just want to go over what your brand is. So, your brand is not a logo, it's not a title, it's not a resume. It's the reputation that you build through your actions, your leadership, and the direction that you choose. So, every one of you already has a brand. The question is whether you're building your brand intentionally. And so LinkedIn is the tool that we use to make that brand visible. So today we're going to position your leadership with purpose. And with that being said, let's start with the very number one item to build your brand on LinkedIn. It's your URL that people will search you by. So when you open up your LinkedIn page, and you'll see lots of things here, photos, headlines, stuff like that. But if we'll come over here to the corner where it says public profile and URL, and you'll click on this little pencil edit button, it'll take you to another page, and then you'll have to hit another one again where it says edit your custom URL. So it's very important for your brand identity to customize this URL. In this case, I've chosen to use my first and last name with a hyphen in between so that they know which Serena Ronhill that I am. And this way, when you put this on applications, whether for schools or for jobs, it shows that you cared enough to make the effort to personalize your LinkedIn to yourself, and it overall just helps make you look more professional. So, again, I always recommend putting your first and last name. If you have a common first and last name, like Jane Smith or something like that, it's okay to put like Jane L. Smith, some kind of middle initial to differentiate yourself. But I would advise whatever your preferred name that you use, that's going to be going right here, and you can just type it in and then you'll hit save. And then once you've got your custom URL, we'll come back to the main profile and we'll start going through the different parts. So again, here I've got my first and last name listed. And then the next thing we're going to focus on is your banner, which is this background picture here, and then your profile photo. So your banner should be something that supports the story that you're trying to tell. It should be simple images, not super distracting, but you want it to promote something that you're working on. So, for example, if you're an artist, you could have like a picture of paintbrushes in the background, or you could use like computer chips if you're going into some kind of technology field. Again, simple, but still showing the direction that your story is going in. The picture I chose to use here on my particular LinkedIn profile is a photo that my dad took. This is a cropped image of a larger print that we sell through an art company that we own together. And so I use this picture to subtly promote that art business while presenting myself both as a student and professionally. So for me, it's like a three birds, one stone kind of situation where I can hit a lot of different things with what's interestingly a very simple image, but it has a lot of dynamic to it. So the next thing we're going to focus on is your photo. So the main thing that I want to emphasize when you are selecting a photo for LinkedIn is you have to understand a little bit of the psychology behind it. What people are looking for is, does this person look credible and approachable? You want to make sure that you have good eye contact in your photo, that there's nothing super distracting in the background, because all of these things combine together to make you look more trustworthy to whoever is looking at your profile. Again, credibility is the number one key here. So with that being said, as you can see, normally I wear glasses on my day-to-day basis. In my photo, I do not have them on because I want to make sure that whoever's looking at my picture, even virtually, can still maintain eye contact with my image. And that again increases my credibility and trustworthiness to that person, whether it's somebody for school or somebody for work. Um, Again, when your face is clear and there's nothing in your way, like you don't have bangs in your face, you don't have um, strange shadows on your face, things like that, it maintains your connection with the person looking at your picture. And again, this is all about making sure that your brain is registering connection with the photograph. So you want to have, again, very neutral background, neutral color clothes on. Definitely dress for the profession that you're going into. So it's okay to have a little bit of individuality. I would just ensure that with your background and with whatever shirt or jacket you have on, that it's like darker neutral colors because you want your face to be the star of this picture. Your face is what makes you memorable. And so when you don't have anything blocking your face, again, trustworthiness, credibility. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at here is going to be this header. And so that's the section that's right underneath your name. And this is what follows you throughout this website. I'll show you for an example when you go over to your network area and you see different people. These are people that are part of my community college, and you'll see it'll have a picture, their name, and then it'll have words underneath them. That's their header. And so the header is very important and very crucial because that's what is going to grab attention from recruiters. And so we want to make sure that we're very intentional with the way we use our header. This is the part where you can put in certain buzzwords, keywords, things like that. But overall, as you're building this header, you can follow this simple four-step instruction. The first part of your header is your identity. The second part of your header is what do you do? The third part is where are you going? And the last part is what makes you unique or stand out. So in my case, right here on my header, I have integrated security professional. That is the field that I work in. I work in physical security for information technology, and I deal with a lot of access control. And so that is what I focused on very first thing. When people see my name, they're going to see that I'm an integrated security professional. Right off the bat, that helps me build my credibility in my profession. The next thing I have is my title at my actual workplace, Electronic Safety and Security Technician. So this talks about what do I do currently right now. This is my active role at my job. If you're not currently employed, if you're a student, then you can put your major in this part. You'll see that I've put my major cybersecurity and IT right after my job title. You can do both like I've done, or you can do one or the other. But either way, it needs to be what you're doing or what you're working on learning right now. And that will be the second part. So the third part, where you're going. Eventually, when I finish my certificates and my degrees, I want to be a physical security engineer, which is the next, well, it's more like three steps up from where I'm currently at as a technician, but that's the goal that I aspire to be in the future. And so, what this shows to potential recruiters is this is the direction I'm trying to take my career. And so anybody who's currently working in that field can see that, and it might help me later down the line when I'm trying to apply for certain programs, or if maybe a recruiter's looking for people who want to be in this position. That key phrase, physical security engineer, will bring my name up as they're searching for thousands and thousands of profiles trying to find people to recruit into their programs. And then lastly, of course, I put my title, District 5 Vice President for Phi Theta Kappa, Texas Region. And this is what makes me unique, what makes me stand out. This is a role that I currently hold right now. If you're with Phi Theta Kappa, put the chapter that you're a part of. If you're a committee leader, if you're an officer, if even if you're not in Phi Theta Kappa and you're part of a different group, like a student government association or some other group or social club activity, this is the part where you can highlight that part of your life. And so, again, for myself, I put that I'm the District 5 Vice President for Texas Region. And all of these things together, that is my headline. So these three things are the most crucial part because it is what everyone's going to see on LinkedIn. And so that's why we're going over these first. So once we've got all of those things established, the next thing we're going to look at is the About section, which is this section down here. So this is the part of your LinkedIn profile that explains your story. So what you want to focus on is four main things. And you'll see I've got four paragraphs here. So the first thing is, who are you, either academically or professionally? So myself, I'm an integrated security professional. I'm also in the cybersecurity and information technology programs, and that's what I've highlighted first. The second thing is, what shaped or strengthened you? So for myself, since my profile is geared more towards my industry, I highlighted all of the things that I do in my current job role. But this could also be the section where, again, if you're not employed, if you're still a student, you can highlight the different honors and activities, any community service outreach that you might have done. This is the section where you highlight that. And as you're highlighting that information from school, make sure you tailor it to whatever field that you're going into. So if you've done a lot of community service and you're going into healthcare, explain how does your community service benefit your future healthcare career. Always make sure to tie it back to the direction that your story is going into. The third thing is, what do you care about or focus on? So what I talked about in this section was the transition that I made from working in hospitality to working into information technology and how that transition strengthened my adaptability and communication. I kept this part very short because I wanted to really focus on the role that I was in and also the next part, which we're about to get into. But just make sure that you keep that part in there because it is really crucial as part of the transition into the closing, which is where you're headed. So in my closing, I said, in addition to working in this particular industry, I also serve with Phi Theta Kappa. I highlighted some of the things that I've done with Phi Theta Kappa, such as like the regional coordination and campus coordinations that I've done, the different meetings and stuff like that. And then I ended the whole thing with my long-term goal is to grow into a physical security engineer, and this is what I want to focus on. Because at the end of all of these things, I'm tailoring it back to the direction that my story is headed into. So again, that's what all of these things together will help build your story and again, give you more credibility and more trustworthiness as you're going into the field that you're working towards. So you're going to notice there's top skills here. We're going to get into that a little bit later, so we'll come back to that section. But overall, this is the about section in your story. So the next thing we're going to focus on is your work experience and then your education. When you're writing your work experience, you'll see I've held a many wide variety of different jobs and stuff like that. So what I've done with the different jobs that I've had is I made sure that I highlighted things that were important. I would not say writing long paragraphs about different things you've done at your jobs. It's more important to keep things short and concise because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're both inviting questions from recruiters. You want to give them just enough of your story so that they will come ask you those questions about, well, Serena, I see that you supported physical security systems. How did you support those physical security systems? What specifically did you do? But you also want to make sure that what you do right here in this section is strong enough to show your impact. And so, for example, on mine, I responded to incidents with risk-based decision making to protect our institutional assets, which is a very nice way of saying that I have to evaluate certain security situations that happen to come up in the course of my job. And so this is a very nice way to highlight that particular role that I have and help also build my experience. And so again, when you're writing these things, keep it very short. Don't write super, super long things. Bullet points are very good because you're trying to build your value, show what you've done. If you've done anything that's helped with your company, like if it helped your sales team increase by 20%, how did you do that? This is the part where you can highlight things like that. And then we're going to take the same approach to your education. So I'll expand my education profile here. So I have a lot of different degree programs that I'm a part of and also certificates and things like that. So what I've done as I've highlighted these is what specialized coursework did I complete during those programs? And I made sure that the things that I've highlighted in those coursework were projects that benefit my future career. So for example, here with my associate's degree, I did a networking class. I learned a lot about TCP/IP, which I actually use in my current job. And so I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that I do have this experience and this is the where I got this experience from. If you're a student who hasn't quite entered the workforce yet, this is a good section where maybe your experience isn't as strong as your education. So make sure you highlight whatever specialized projects you've done in class that will benefit the career you're trying to go into. And then also make sure that if you've gotten any academic honors, if you've held any leadership roles, where did you hold those leadership roles with? What groups were you a part of? Put that information here. And especially if you've earned certificates, things like that, again, some of these for me, they're not necessarily degrees. They're like this one right here for Austin Community College Information User. That's a certificate, but I still put it under the education section because that is something that I did take classes for. And so continuing education certificates, things like that, it's okay to put that information on here. Workers want to see, or companies want to see that their workers are invested in expanding their education and staying long term. So this again helps with reputation and brand building. All right, so now once we've got the experience and the education sections a little more fleshed out, we'll come down here to volunteering. And so this is again another way to help talk about things that you might have done. So we'll see here, I've done quite a lot of volunteering with Phi Theta Kappa, both at chapter level and the Texas region level. So I've talked about the different things that I've done with Phi Theta Kappa, the different projects that I've worked on, awards that I've won. We're treating this very similarly to the experience in the education section, where we're expanding on projects that I've done that have helped with my career or helped with my soft skill building as well. Because it's all well and good to have the technical training, but you also need to have soft skills because that makes you a more cohesive candidate, whether you're trying to transfer into a university or go into the workforce. And so again, I've highlighted different things that I've done here, helped out with local security groups and stuff like that. So just make sure that you highlight what it was that you've done with them. So once we've got that one taken care of, this is when we're going to come down to skills. So let me open this section up here. With the skills, you want to make sure that the skills you're highlighting either is something you've done throughout your coursework or it's something to do with your job. I am constantly updating this section of skills. And you can, of course, always add the skills by, adding this plus button here, and then you can type in things like Adobe Photoshop or AutoCAD. When you are adding skills, I would recommend be specific as possible. Um, so for example, I wrote here that I have FERPA experience because I work for a college, but then I expand a little bit further and talk about the different programs that I'm responsible for and specific I name specific companies that I like have done program trainings with. And so it's good to have like general technical support, but then these are the things that I supported and these are the things that I learned really well. Like for example, I use Genetech and I can take that skill and maybe I might not know Milestone, which is a program similar to Genetech, but because I have the Genetech experience, it'll be easier for me to transition to learning Milestone or things of that nature. So again, we want to highlight these skills and also as you're adding these skills, there is a section where it'll let you add the skills to your experience and your education. So, for example, I put physical security. I don't just do physical security for my college. I also do physical security at other positions that I've held in the past. And so the more you add these skills, the more it helps build up your experience with whatever it is that you're working on. And so you can add them to volunteering opportunities, you can add them to your honors and awards. And then on LinkedIn, we're going to scroll back up to the very top. So there's a section right here where it lets you pick your top 5 skills to showcase on your website or on your LinkedIn profile. And so for myself, these are the top 5 skills that I chose so that when people are searching for workers in these particular industries, it'll help my profile rise to the top of the algorithm. And so this will also assist me if I'm looking for specific education, like grad programs or jobs in that field. That's where these top 5 skills come into handy. And so be very intentional when you're selecting which skills to put as your top 5. And again, intentional and specific. The more specific you are, the better you are in the long run because it will help your algorithm. All right. And so then for recommendations, one thing I'm going to also note, this can tie back in with your skills as well. People, you can give this and people can give this to you. It's, you can have people endorse your skill set. So let me scroll down here because I have some endorsements closer towards the bottom. So I have experience with event planning. I've had former coworkers who endorsed my skills with event planning. So this helps with both your skills and also recommendations. And so what that does when you have people endorse you or when you have somebody give you a recommendation or you give them a recommendation, that helps your credibility with whatever that skill is. And it also helps with networking. I recommend, and mind you, I have not quite finished this myself because I have a few that are in the process right now, but it's always a good idea to ask people in your network, hey, we worked on this project together. Would you mind writing a quick recommendation for me? And they can talk about what it was that y'all worked on together, whether it was something for honors in action or college project, or even in your professional career. They can work together to help build that skill for you. So, but likewise, make sure that you're also giving recommendations too, because if your profile is only people giving you recommendations, but you're not giving any back, it makes your profile seem uh, not as reciprocal. And so the main point of this is when you're giving these recommendations, you want to look like a team player. And so if you have more people endorsing you and you endorsing them, it's very much a two-way street here. And so it overall makes you look like a more not necessarily like likable, but just a better team player, somebody who is willing to um, pitch in and help out because everybody wants to be around that person who is helpful and will also provide assistance. And so, again, recommendations are very important. So also any honors and awards that you might have achieved. I have listed here a lot of stuff for Phi Theta Kappa, but I also have my Scholastic Leaderships Awards, and then also have professional awards that I've won previously as well. So this would be the section to highlight that. And then also you can put what the award was for. So for myself, last year I won Distinguished Chapter Officer, so I made sure to include that and highlight that information, especially if, again, you don't have so much work experience, it's more academic. That's the section to really like promote yourself and put the different achievements that you've had. Okay, so with all that being said, now what we're going to look at is activity. So with LinkedIn, circling back to what I said at the beginning, LinkedIn is a social media website and they want you to be very active. So when you're posting things, creating content, be very intentional with the content that you're creating. So a lot of mine is based around Phi Theta Kappa and also education, any events that I follow, conferences that I might have participated in. I'll repost the event and then say a small blurb about my participation level with that event. And so, the main focus with your activity is increasing your overall visibility and bringing your brand to life on LinkedIn. A strong profile that no one sees does not create opportunities, but visibility builds your opportunity. So, again, don't sleep on reposting. Make sure you're following different schools or companies that you're interested in. If they post something that's relevant to yourself, say something, make a thoughtful comment on it. Don't just like because likes don't build content. Make sure you say something to that person like, hey, congratulations. Or it could even be, hey, I'm really interested in, for example, one of my friends got into the University of Texas. And so I commented to her like, hey, that was really awesome that you got into UT. Congratulations. Would you mind working with me on, what was your application process like? And when you do things like that, when you make thoughtful comments like that on people's posts, what it can do is open the door to the warm welcome. You can then add people on LinkedIn by sending them a brief information. For example, with my friend with UT, I really admire you. I see we're not friends on LinkedIn. Can I connect with you? And so that builds your overall reputation within the LinkedIn community. And so the other thing that you want to make sure to is be strategic with your networking. It's completely fine to reach out to classmates and say, especially if it's somebody you've had previously and y'all consistently start having the same classes over and over, reach out to them and say, hey, I see, we might not be in the same program, but we're having a lot of the same classes. Is it okay if we connect on LinkedIn? I would just advise that when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn, try to send them a message first before reaching out to them. Because if you're cold calling, so to speak, and just connecting with people, but you don't tell them who you are, they may not remember you. It might have been a while since they've last seen you. And so that they will be less likely to accept your invite, and so that could really stunt you when you're trying to build your connections and build your relationships with people online. And all of this again circles back because you're trying to get yourself out there. The more active you are on your algorithm, the more higher engagement levels you have, the more LinkedIn pushes your profile forward and puts you ahead of maybe somebody who builds a LinkedIn and then never touches it again. Those profiles tend to either one, be seen as AI bots and therefore they're not real people. Even if they are a real person, they could be perceived as not being real. And so LinkedIn will more than likely push their profile to the very bottom and not show those profiles to recruiters. And also, you want to ensure that if you're not as engaged, LinkedIn will start dropping you and it'll make it seem like maybe you don't care as much about, your profile as you should. What I've noticed with a lot of people in my profession is that they make a LinkedIn profile, they're really engaged, they get the job they want, and then they never ever post on LinkedIn again. And that's a mistake. That is a very huge mistake that you should not make. You should continue to stay engaged because even if you're not necessarily the one being helped, you could then help somebody else reach out to people, maybe students who are trying to get some advice or assistance. Again, it's all about engaging, it's all about creating content and being a part of the overall social community. And so the more engaged you are, the more higher your profile is. And I would continue to stay engaged even after you achieve whatever it is the goal that you've met for the moment. Because just because you've met that one goal doesn't mean you're not going to decide to come back later and work on the next goal. And you don't want your ratings to drop in between you working on the next goal and the next goal. So again, always stay engaged, stay active, even if it's just once a week, you go through, comment on a few posts, like a few posts, reblog them, things like that. Just again, stay engaged, stay active online because if you're not, LinkedIn will start dropping you and then you won't be the first search result. You might be the 250th search result, things like that. So, overall, we started talking tonight about your brand. Again, your brand is the story that people tell about you when you're not in the room, and LinkedIn is simply the place where that story becomes visible. So every one of you already has your leadership story, whether it's scholarship, service, growth, resilience. So the question is whether you're positioning yourself intentionally. So make sure you position yourself with purpose so that the right opportunities can come find you. Thank you very much, and I will now be taking questions.
If you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them into the chat. I was making a few updates in real time based on Serena's feedback and her coaching here because I realized that it had been a minute since I had made some updates, and she's right. You gotta keep it fresh.
Mhm.
Any questions? Well, I'll just ask a question out loud. So Serena, let's say that it's your first year in community college, right? And you're
Mhm.
just trying to get your LinkedIn up and going. You don't have a whole lot yet to put on there. What is the approach you take?
So the approach that I would take, because I have been in this position myself, I decided that I was going to focus a lot on any extracurricular activities I had done while I was in high school.
Mhm.
And it's completely okay to put those things on there when you're just starting out, especially if you're like just freshly graduated. You don't have a lot of school experience, you don't have a lot of work experience. And so if you were part of any extracurricular activities, whether at school or in your church or in your community or what have you, put that information under the volunteering section because that education, experience, and volunteering are all essentially one and the same, just different parts of your life. And so I would really emphasize the volunteering section and put that information in there and that will help build your overall profile and also stay engaged. If you don't have a lot going on your profile, then this is the moment where you need to start reaching out, start following different schools or different companies that you're interested in going into, and start reposting, reblogging, commenting, even reach out to students like, for example, and I'm going to keep referencing the University of Texas because it's right down the street from my house. But if you want to reach out to like a student group over there, like an honors group or robotics club, something like that, and say, hey, my name is, student at this and such community college. I'm really interested in potentially transferring. Can you tell me what the process was like? And that will help start building your connections and reaching out that way.
Very nice. I like it. I think a lot of people dismiss volunteerism. There's a reason that it's asked about on scholarship applications and a lot of work applications anymore. People want to know that you are engaged in your community, but also you develop skills volunteering. So
Hmm.
I think
Leadership skills, community service skills, time management skills.
communication, right?
Yeah,
Working on
yeah.
teams, I think that probably we need to refresh how we think, right, about some of the things that we do
Hmm.
and then highlight it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't think to put stuff that they've done in extracurriculars on their LinkedIn profile because they're like, oh, that was when I was younger and stuff like that. But it's like, well, yes, but if you don't have a lot of activity on your profile or you haven't quite gotten to the level of experience that you want to be at, then list it, post it on there, talk about what you did and what skills that you learned from that experience because that will ultimately help you. And then once you've gained more experience and stuff like that, you can replace it later on.
Yeah.
My volunteering list when I first started on LinkedIn was long, like miles long. I had a lot of stuff on there because I didn't have a lot of work history experience when I first got on the website. But
Mhm.
as my career has grown, my experience section grew, and so my volunteering section started getting a little bit smaller to because I didn't need it as much. So
Right.
anything that wasn't relevant, for example, I used to work in the food industry, now I work in IT. So on my LinkedIn profile, anything related to the food industry, I either took it off or I
Mhm.
minimized and kept it down to like one sentence. This is what I did. I was a restaurant manager at this restaurant. End of story. Next story.
Right.
Because I want to focus my LinkedIn profile to the career that I'm trying to get into, or in this case, trying to continue on with and grow into.
Absolutely. Just like with a resume, you got to refresh these things.
Hmm. And not when you're getting ready to start a new job. Stay engaged because nobody really wants to be that person that gets hit up and like, hey, I need a job reference. And it's like, when did I last talk to you? It's been like 10 years, my guy. So
Yep.
it's better if you maintain those relationships with your former coworkers or former bosses or even former classmates because you never know when you're going to need a recommendation letter. You never know what
Mhm.
kind of assistance you're going to need. So it's better to maintain those relationships instead of letting them die off and then having to come back later and be like, oh, wait, hey, person I haven't talked to in forever, can you help me get this job? Like, nobody wants to be that guy. It's very uncomfortable and awkward to have to, and I get phone calls like that from former employees that I had, and I don't mind helping them. I always love to help people out, but you want to make sure it's easier when it's like for example a student that I'm more familiar with that I work with every now and then on projects than somebody I haven't talked to in so many years and all of a sudden they're back in my life asking for assistance and it's like okay. So that's why I always talk about
No, you're
maintaining your
right.
reputation, your brand, all of that is very important.
Yeah, and if you're in Phi Theta Kappa, keeping connections with your advisor, your regional coordinator, if you have, any type of relationship with them, all of that's important. I can't tell you, I write probably just as many letters of recommendation and related things like that, give job references for former students of mine as I do for current students of mine. And I can only do that if I'm still engaged with you, because otherwise I'm like, well, I talked to them 10 years ago and they were great then. I don't know now. Like, there's nothing for me to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
So I think John has a question for you there in the chat.
Yes. When do I think it's best to add something to my LinkedIn? As in, whenever I learned a new skill, something I just did, or just anything that relates to your pathway. I will tell you, John, I update my LinkedIn once a week. So I am always checking it. I'm always taking a look at things. Um, and it's a little funny. Sometimes my boss kind of gets annoyed with me because I'm at work looking through LinkedIn. and looking at other jobs. He's like, "Are you trying to leave me?" I'm like, "No, I'm just trying to see what other skills people have to see if I need that skill too." I just recently learned that there's a certification that would be very beneficial to myself that one of my aunts is working on. And I was like, hey, wait, I need that one too, so that I can later down the line get this other kind of position that I'm working for. So I would recommend constantly staying on top of your LinkedIn. If you just recently got a certification, add it and share that you got that certification. Allow people to celebrate your achievement with your academics or any kind of continuing education that you might have gotten. If you recently got really good with Python or some other kind of skill, whatever relates to the field you're going into, add that skill. Say, hey, I recently participated in this weekend program and this is the new skill I learned. Just constantly be updating. And that also helps towards your overall algorithm and showing LinkedIn that you're a very active person on their platform. And then they're going to, in the end, promote you and your profile to, again, headhunters or recruiters, things like that.
I love that approach because I think it keeps you constantly improving yourself, which employers love to see, right? That you're constantly adding to your skill set in that way. So looking at others can be really helpful. I think that's especially in your field, Serena. Um, but that can be really important to see areas where you can grow to make yourself more competitive or just better at your
Yeah.
own job. Not always leaving, you're right.
Right. Yeah, definitely anything to because employers love when you do self-improvement as well, especially when you like take the initiative to go to classes and take that education or take that test or certification, whatever it is that you're working towards. Employers always love to support people in that, and I'm going to school part-time and working full-time, and my boss is very like supportive of like all the bosses I've had have been very supportive of my education journey. So I would say also like as you're working through this process, don't be afraid to share your achievements with your coworkers and your team, let them know like, hey, I'm about to graduate this certificate program or what have you, and let them celebrate you because it is an achievement to be honored and even more things to put on your LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're from the Texas region and you're going to TRC next week, some of you may have some things to add to your LinkedIn after the awards gala, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely did.
Any other questions for Serena while we have her captive? Serena will also be presenting this again in person at TRC next week. So if you missed any part of it or just want to hear it again, because it's a lot of information, um, or maybe you think of more questions that you want to ask, then definitely check out her workshop at TRC next week.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate it.
All right. If there are no other questions, then we'll go ahead and we'll let Serena go because she has a very busy life, and do the rest of you. So, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate this. We are going to put this on the Texas Region's YouTube channel, so you can go back and revisit, share it with others in your chapter, and of course, as I said, if you're going to be at the Texas Regional Convention next week, then please do check out her workshop again if you want an opportunity to hear this again and ask any additional questions in person. Thank you so much, Serena, for doing this. As I said, it's
Yeah.
the first LinkedIn workshop we have had in the Texas region, and so I'm really excited to have someone with your skill set who did a really fantastic job of outlining what's important here. I know I learned some things, and I've been using LinkedIn for a minute. So thank you personally. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm right there.
There you
Sounds
go. I like it. We
absolutely.
know, and we know your because you have your name in
Hmm.
your in
Yes.
your thing. Yep. I do too. I did do that one right. Okay. All right. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.